on the TMA. And so that's kind of a bit of chaos for us because we rely heavily on his leadership, and now he's sitting in the back. And so there are two vice chairs for this group, Pasco County Commissioner Catherine Starkey and myself. And as you can see, Commissioner Starkey is not here yet. So you're stuck with me, at least for the time being. If Commissioner Starkey gets here, then she and I will go to the middle of the room and we will arm wrestle about who will lead the meeting for the rest of the morning. And so thank you all for coming. We have some folks here with us this morning that do not normally attend. And it's very nice to have some county commissioners here that we don't normally have with us, and some other dignitaries with us. Hey, Commissioner, how are you? And so the purpose of the meeting is to provide some feedback on proposed regional MPO appointments. And so we recently have discussed a little more in depth the role of small cities, or the potential role that small cities might play in a merged MPO. And we had a very dynamic meeting a week or so ago at the Suncoast League of Cities, was kind enough to host for us. Had some good interaction and some good discussion about that. And so we're here to present that to the TMA and hopefully get some guidance from the TMA to send back to the three MPOs and bake into this proposal. And so that's the purpose of the meeting. So I'm Andy Ross. I am mayor of the city of Temple Terrace, which is the third largest city in Hillsborough County. And so I'm also chair of the Hillsborough TPO, and as I mentioned, vice chair of this group. And so very happy to be here with you this morning. And if we could, we'll just go around and quickly introduce ourselves, particularly because we have some folks that normally aren't here. So we'll start over here and work around, and then we'll go to the outside of the room. How's that?
Good morning, Nicole Dufa, Council Administration.
Welcome.
Good morning, Heather Stobush from Parks.
Brian Hunter with the Florida Department of Transportation.
Good, Commissioner.
Jack Mariano, Pasco MPO, Chairman of the Sheriff.
Tania Gorman, Pasco MPO, Executive Director.
Johnny Wong, I'm the Director of Hillsborough TPO.
Commissioner Harry Cohen, Hillsborough TPO, and I'm not a member anymore of the TMA, but I was quite some time ago. And I think along with the others that were here today, we'll just sort of add our 2 cents into the discussion.
Commissioner Wilson of Hillsborough, I probably won't give any 2 cents today.
And then I'll give 4 cents.
Greg Slater, Executive Director of the Expressway Authority, and just real quick while I have the floor, welcome to our building. So if you need any kind of thing, just let me know. Just for logistics, the facilities are kind of right out that door. It's pretty quiet. If you need to take a call, things like that. But if you need anything at all, just let us know.
Commissioner Glenn Myers, TPO.
Good morning, Gina Driscoll, City Council Member for the City of St. Petersburg and Chair of Core Pinellas.
Good morning, Quick Lansing, Executive Director of Port Pinellas.
Good morning, everybody. Brian Scott, Pinellas County Commission and Vice Chair of Port Pinellas.
Good morning, everybody. Commissioner Renee Flowers, Pinellas County, member of Pinellas Board and incoming president of the Association of Counties.
Good morning, Chris here, Pinellas County Commission. I believe that I'm replacing Commissioner Hager, so I'll try not to cause too much chaos. That's my new goal.
Very good. Welcome, Commissioner.
Wade Carroll, Bonneville.
Todd Brower, the White House Group.
Tina Porter, Tampa Bay Shores.
Dave Eggers, Pinellas County Chair.
Good morning, Demetrius Sanders with the Tampa Bay Partnership.
Jeff Eber with HCD.
Doug Abadi with Chris Shear's office.
John Stewart, the Southern Group.
Good morning, Greg Horwedale, Hillsborough County.
Morning, Tom Reed, Vice Mayor, City of South Pasadena, Vice Chair of TSPA, and Board Member of Fort Pinellas.
Good morning, Chris Johnson, Vice Mayor, City of Largo. Sean Hoffman, Pasco MPO Plan.
Angela Beal, Pasco MPO.
Dr. Casey Campbell, Pasco MPO Training.
Tina Sanchez, Florida Communications and Outreach. Sarah Faber, Chelsea Farrow, Fort Pinellas staff. Stephanie Garcia for Pasco MPO.
Well, very good. Thank you and welcome to everybody. It's nice to have some new blood, and it's also nice to have so many people here for discussion. So Are there any members of the public here or really non-board members who wish to address the board at this time in public comment? Okay, Demetria Simmons, Ms. Simmons, please, welcome.
Can you guys hear me? Okay, all right. All right. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned, I'm Demetria Simmons, President and CEO of the Tampa Bay Partnership. For those of you who are not familiar with the partnership is a coalition of sweet business and not-for-profit leaders throughout the Tampa Bay region. We have about 45 companies that invest with us annually that represent about 150,000 jobs in the 8-county Tampa Bay region. And just wanted to come and share a couple of things with you this morning, why the partnership in the business community is excited about advancing the unified NPO. One of the things that we wanted to share is today, over 260,000 of our residents commute across those 3 county lines on a daily basis. And over 200,000 of them have over an hour commute each day. So they're already living and working regionally. Workforce doesn't think about these things from an individual county level. It thinks about it from a regional level. We recently did a report on housing, and 91% of those folks say you can't talk about housing without talking about transportation. And so we think that there's a clear message that housing and transportation need to be integrated. We're encouraged about the progress of the NPO. We think we can all benefit from cross-county collaboration, and it would also put us in a strong position for funding. So I just want to say that collaboration achieves what the individual counties cannot do alone. We're in a vacuum, and we don't think the transportation plan should do that. So I'm just here on behalf of the partnership and our investors and our 150,000 workers to be supported. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Simmons. Are there other members of the public who wish to address the board? Okay, seeing none, we'll move into the approval of the December meeting minutes. Has everybody had an opportunity to approve? And if so, is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the December meeting minutes.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Driscoll, seconded by Commissioner Mariano. Any discussion of the minutes? If not, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays?
Aye.
Oh, Commissioner Starkey's online. I guess we can stop watching the door now. Very good. Welcome, Commissioner Starkey. Next, we have election of officers. Dr. Wong, is staff going to lead us through this, or am I going to tap dance?
I can lead you through this.
Okay.
So Commissioner Eggers served as chair of the TMA through 2025. Oh, thank you. And by the way, there is the button. All right, I'll figure this out. By the way, there is no video coming through for members who are watching online. So if you would do us all a favor and identify yourself before you speak. Commissioner Eggers from Pinellas served in the role as TMA chair through 2025. I think this group has traditionally selected a member as an incoming chair from one of the other 2 counties. And then it has also been the tradition to select vice chair or co-vice chair from the counties who are not serving as chair for the upcoming year. So I will allow Mayor Ross to solicit nominations. No second is needed, and we'll go around the room until one of the candidates has a majority of the votes. All right, I see that now. Thank you.
Okay, so we need a chair and 2 vice chairs, preferably from 3 different counties.
Preferably, yes.
So we will open the nominations for chair, and we'll not have nominations from the floor. So the floor is open for nominations for chair. Council member.
Thank you. St. Petersburg Councilmember Gina Driscoll. I would like to nominate Ross to be the chair if he would be willing to do so.
Thank you, council member.
I would also like to nominate him as well.
If I may, there is
there is a microphone right in front of Mayor Ross that can pick up much of the room. If you're sitting over here on the ends, if you just speak very loudly, and if you're not, then we can bring you a microphone if you can't be heard. So just a quick-
Okay. Commissioner Starkey, was that you that I heard?
Yes, I'm nominating you for chair.
Well, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Councilmember. I would accept that. Other nominations from the floor for chair? Well, thank you all very much for that. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, I think.
Does that need to be, does that need to
Does,
be?
do we need a
Voice vote.
voice vote
Do
even
you
on?
need that in the
Okay.
form of a motion?
I believe we would.
I think we just need to vote.
We just need a vote. Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No nays. Thank you very much, everybody, for your confidence. I appreciate that. We'll see if I'm still thanking you in 6 months, but thank you. So we need a vice chair. We need two vice chairs, actually, but one at a time, either from Pasco or Pinellas. And I'll open the nominations from the floor for either county. We'll start with either county, whoever comes up first.
I'd like to nominate Jack Mariano for vice chair.
Accept?
I do.
Other nominations for this?
Well, can staff, this is Commissioner Vince Nowicki online. Can someone clarify if we can participate virtually? Because I was under the impression from Mr. Blanton, we wouldn't be able to participate virtually online.
Online participation by members is not allowed. You have to be physically present in the room to make motions and votes per Florida law. So online participation is not, we're not able to.
Okay. Someone else can make my motion.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. So we currently have one nomination for Commissioner Mariano. Are there other nominations? Okay, if not, all those in favor of Commissioner Mariano serving as one of the two vice chairs, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No nays. Congratulations, Commissioner.
Thank you, I think.
Now we need another nomination for the second vice from, and this one should be from Pinellas County, ideally. Commissioner Driscoll or Councilmember Driscoll.
Thank you. I would like to nominate City Council Member and City Council Vice Chair, Richie Floyd.
Good. All righty. Welcome, Councilmember Floyd. I know you came in late, so we have a nomination from Councilmember Driscoll for Councilmember Floyd. And other nominations?
I
If
would
not-
nominate Gina Driscoll.
And who was that? We don't think we can do that. We can't do that from.
Oh, that's right.
remote.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you. I'm sorry, Councilmember.
Thank you. It's Gina Driscoll. Commissioner Starkey, I just wanted to thank you very much for your confidence. But I think we'll be in great hands with Council Vice Chair Floyd.
Okay, very good. All those in favor of Councilmember Floyd, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nays? Councilmember Floyd, welcome. Thank you. Very good. Well, that was relatively painless. Thank you. So I would say that to one of the two new vice chairs that you guys will have to arm wrestle over this, because I do have to leave at 10:30 to go back to Temple Terrace for a meeting that I can't avoid. And so,
Good news, we're gonna have to end at 10:30. I gotta go too.
okay, you have to go too. Okay. We'll just move right along then. Okay, so.
Got
It is 9:45 now. I think hopefully we can accomplish this. And so the next item is a regional MPO apportionment plan. And I believe Sarah Caper from the Hillsborough TPO staff is going to kind of run us through where we are with this. And so, good morning, Sarah.
Thank you, TMA Leadership Group. And I guess through this morning, we will be talking about the regional MPO and specifically the role of smaller cities. And invite Todd Brown with White House as our consultant to walk us through the presentation.
Morning.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, I don't know if this is good or bad, but I'm going to remind everybody, it is Friday the 13th. Okay, so I got a couple checks, I'll take that. I'm really glad to be here, Todd Brower with White House Group, because I guess they still can't actually see the video on there, okay, yep, so Todd Barrow with White House Group contracted, working under the guidance of Sarah as our project manager, but also our 3 executive directors. And something that I want to bring up quickly as we start to have this conversation is that need to have good faith going into this. I think for some of you that haven't attended all the meetings, you're going to see a few new faces here. I'm going to get some context as we go along with it to help guide our conversation that we're going to have together. But I started my first meeting with all of you in September of last year. And one of the things that I started with was the idea that trust and good faith would be the biggest part of the foundation that moves this process forward. That we can have open and honest conversations that sometimes can be difficult. I want to go all Brene Brown on everybody, but wrestling is okay with this. This is a very challenging problem. It's something that's been talked about for almost 30 years at this point. And I want to really commend the team that I've been working with, your 3 executive directors and current MPOs. They have had every meeting in good faith with me. They've wrestled with some of the more difficult questions that I've asked them. They have shown great leadership in this, as have all of you. So it's really a pleasure to actually be here, to be working with you. Again, we started this, our kickoff meeting was in August. We got fully started back in September. So I want to give you a little bit of an idea of what we've accomplished to date, because they are foundational pieces. They're pieces to kind of understand what are your current circumstances, what are the perspectives. So I'll start with the MPO employee survey. It has been completed. It is on the website. We were asking the current employees of the MPO their thoughts about what it would be like to merge, what were things that they were concerned with, ideas, opportunities for improvement. What would we also like to see from the effectiveness standpoint? So these are your individuals that are on the ground. They're working, they get their hands dirty, they're working on their LRTPs, or I'm sorry, dates me again, the MTPs. They're doing all of these efforts and are in the trenches working through this. So we wanted to get their perspective. So that resource is available to you so you can see what their thoughts were as the actual employees that ultimately could be affected by merging the MPOs together. We also then did a summary, a data collection, where we wanted to understand all of the MPOs. How are they the same? How are they different? Well, we needed to get that information. So we have a summary of the operations divided up into 4 groups: board and active community, active committees, as well as what are your contractual agreements? Are there anything that could be a challenge in agreements that you've already made individually that could affect the whole? As well as the financial state, doing not a deep audit, but going through the financials, understanding how they're different, how they work, as well as staffing and management. So staffing and management also, because each one of these are a direct division of the county, understanding who does their procurement, who does their payroll. It's different for all 3. Then in November, we had a principals workshop. So we invited every city, every appointed official, so all the city managers, county administrator, everyone to basically get together to say, all right, let's start talking about it. I see a few faces that were here that were very active with it to really understand. And we divided it up into 3 different groups. We had the principal group, and I'll go into what a principal is in a little more detail, but the important part is to understand that any regional MPO has to have 4 principal bodies that have agreed with it. So they have to be not unanimous in their vote together, but they all 4 have to agree to move this forward. That's the 3 Board of County Commissions, as well as the city of Tampa. That is under federal law because they are the largest city within the 3 county region. So we had the principals group, but then we also had a partner city. And that's going to be really indicative of what we're going to talk about today is how could smaller cities, those that may not be have the population to have a seat on there, how could they be represented? And so we worked with them to come up with some ideas about what would that look like? How would we move forward with that? The nice thing is we do feel like we moved the needle. Now, again, it was only for those that had participated. So there wasn't a virtual option. It was there in person. But we did ask everybody as it ended, hey, how do you feel about the regional MPO? Like, what's the general vibe that's coming along? Hearing my 21-year-old daughter saying the vibe, the vibe. Well, I'm happy to report that at the end of it, we did get many that were positive. 83% of those that had stayed said that they were strongly convinced or at least cautiously optimistic. There were a few that were skeptical, and that's why we continue to have these conversations, is to work through those issues. And then there were a few that were on the fence, but the majority of them, at least coming out of that workshop, although we had some challenges with it, felt like we're starting to move the needle a bit. We're just wrapping up then on a comparison report. So we take all that data and we're now looking at understanding what are the differences between the MPO, particularly those differences that would impact, and those that would be the same that could impact the merging of a regional MPO once you move forward. So those are what we've completed thus far. We still have some work to do. The biggest piece of what we're doing is the draft enforcement plan. So this is the context piece that I wanted to start with. Back in October 2023, all three MPOs said we have a memorandum of understanding, essentially with the goal of saying we want to reach a certified regional MPO by July 2027. At that point then, the leadership group in 2024 started to look at some parameters related to that. And in the February meeting, so it was interesting, I reviewed these again last night, going through the minutes, looking at the wonderful conversation that was going back and forth. And there were kind of three major issues. There were board size, but then there was also how are the modal partners going to be there, and then who would be non-advisory. So in February, you had a lot of wrestling within this group to say, okay, is it the airport? Would they come off the top? Would they go later? So there was a lot of conversation that was happening. But by May of 2024, there was a consensus that was reached. And I'd like to read it straight out of the minutes of the consensus that occurred. And the consensus on this item included 25 seats for voting members, which include 1 Port of Tampa Bay, 2, 1 for Tampa International Airport, 23 remaining votes to be divided proportionally, and 4 non-voting technical advisors, including the 3 transit agencies as well as the Florida Department of Transportation. What I don't want to lose sight here, though, is back in February, there was a great conversation about how to engage smaller cities. And again, we had that at the principals workshop as well. So all of these things have been wrestled with quite a bit through that. But by May, you come to a consensus that you're going to have a board of 25 right off the top. You've got the port, the airport, and then the advisory group. So that was set in consensus at that point. Well, we took then those options. There were 3 options that have come out of not just the TMA group. And I'm happy to report too, when I look back at February, each one of these options actually came from a different member with Forward Pinellas, Pasco MPO, and Plan Hillsborough all having engagement with that. So when you look at these options, it's really a representation of this body. So the first one was looking at a representation from each county prior to allocating the seat by population. Option 2 was 1 representative serving as the chair of a smaller cities advisory committee. And then the third one is saying, let the county and the city of Tampa, the principals, determine how we would address the smaller issues. So you could kick that down the county as we go on. So today, though, now that we've listened to the Suncoast League of Cities, we've had that conversation, I'm going to give a little bit of a background of what feedback that they provided. Your objective today is to see if we can come to a preferred scenario. And you can recommend a preferred scenario, because it is the last piece of the puzzle for us trying to look at an enforcement plan to move forward. So that is the ultimate goal, because we want to know how many will remain from that. So I also want to talk about the future too, is what happens then after that, after this meeting. Well, again, we need to know the number of remaining seats that's left. Is it 23? Is it 22? Is it 20? What does that look like? So once we finish this, then we will have the number of seats that are done by population proportionate. The executive directors will give a staff recommendation working with their MPO boards to basically say, okay, those remaining seats that are done by population, we have a recommendation that we're going to take to the existing MPOs as they are to say, we think this is an opportunity, a proposal as to how to move forward with those. So once the MPOs have looked at that, then my job is to take those names, who's going to be part of a regional MPO should it happen, and update then the draft legal agreement. So that's an enforcement plan, that's bylaws, that's service offerings, and that's also a funding plan. From that standpoint, then once I have the last remaining pieces of that puzzle, then there will be a request from the MPOs to vote from the 4 principals. And again, it's the 3 county commissions, as well as the city of Tampa, at least just to support. So again, it's a barometer check. Are we down the line? So at least there's something to react to. So they can say, hey, we've gone through this work. These are all the people that have been involved. This is now something for you to react to. It'll obviously go through legal reviews over and over again. So it may be a long haul, but I'm going to remind you of the date. July 2027 is when a certified MPO, and the one thing I do want to mention is it's not just the vote by the 4 principal bodies, but the governor also has to sign on it as well. So for it to be certified as an MPO, the 4 bodies have to vote on it, principals, but the governor has to sign on it as well. So let's start with the regional snapshot then, because again, your goal is to think about the small cities option. You've got a fact sheet in front of you that looks like this. I'm going to go through some of it in detail before I turn it over to you to ask questions. But the important part too is when you're looking at the apportionment side, it is by state law that must be done by the census. So the most current census that we have is 2020. The 2030 census will probably see some real differences. So I know you're looking at these numbers, all of you saying, well, we're much larger than that. I completely believe you, and Beaver shows that those numbers are changing. But when it comes to the apportionment side, it's by state statutes that you have to use the census to do it. Our most current one is the 2020. The next one will be in 2020, 2030. And it typically takes about 2 years for them to release the data. So if you were doing a reapportionment, it would likely happen in 2032, 2033. You see the breakdown there. I wanted you to be able to see how each one of these areas are different. And we saw that with the Suncoast League of Cities. They were able to talk about how different each one of the counties were in the number of small cities that you have, or smaller cities. Right? So in Hillsborough, you have 2 cities that are at or under 50,000, where Pasco has 6, Pinellas has 20. Very different makeup of how those smaller cities would look like, particularly when you're looking at how would they be represented from a regional standpoint. So that's a snapshot of what you're dealing with, how many cities you would be for each one of the counties. Now I'd like to get into a little bit of the options. So there are 3 options. As I said, these are 3 options that had come from the TMA back in February. They were also looked at in the principals workshop and discussed. We've discussed them as a group multiple times. And I'm going to go through option 1 first. I'm going to go through each one of these individually so you can see them, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about them. The way to read this table is from the top to the bottom. So the TMA back in May said we have consensus on 25 voting seats. There were then seats off the top. Agreed on the airport and the port. In this particular case, we're looking at 3 seats that would be designated, 1 for each county, which then leaves a remainder of 20 seats to be allocated by population, again by Florida statute, which gives Hillsborough 10, Pinellas 6, Pasco 4, and then you have your 4 advisory committees there. With option 2, you then have 1 representative from the cities from all 3 that is basically serving as the chair of a small cities advisory council that then acts as a voting member from that group. So you start with 25, you're doing 3 off the top. You saw the airport, the port, and then you'd have 1 smaller city that would be represented, which then leaves you 22 seats that would then be allocated. And the MPO boards are going to be looking at this as to a suggestion as to what those 11 from Hillsborough would look like, the 7 from Pinellas, the 4 from Pasco, and then the same thing, the non-voting advisors. Option 3, start with 25. You actually only have 2. So it essentially say at this point, the smaller cities would be allocated based off of what the city, the counties would want to do along with the city of Tampa Bay. So in a sense, it's pushing the can down the road to say during that apportionment phase, they'll then make that decision if they want to address it within their own jurisdiction. So in that case, we're left with 23 seats, 11, 8, 4 with the same advisors. So when we look at these options then as a whole, you're looking at, and the big part for us is the remaining seats. So you'll see, I need to understand from the apportionment side as well as your MPO board would be, are we dealing with 20, 22, or 23? That's why we're asking for a recommendation from this group to say, how many would be filtered down from that standpoint? So there is something I wanted to bring up though, because there is a uniqueness related to this. So I always call this fun with data. Tables are great, but tables don't always tell you the whole story. I wanted you to see what the apportionment breakdown would look like, because when you look at the numbers below, so if you're looking at population by seat, you'll see option 1 has 10, 6, and 4, where then option 2 has 11, 7, and 4, 11, 8, and 4. Well, that's because you're pulling numbers off the top. So when we bring those numbers back into it, Hillsborough remains 44% of the voting membership, where you'll see a slight difference in Pinellas and Pasco, because option 1 basically says from each one of those jurisdictions, you're going to have one small city representative there. So it does change the percentage a bit within the modal seats being the same. Option 2 gets unique because it's a shared seat. So you don't know actually which jurisdiction it would be represented. It would likely be a rotation. And that's part of the conversation that we need to have as well. So it's always good to parcel this out so you can understand what the impact of each one of those would be. We put together some key points because really is to hopefully guide this conversation a bit, to work you through the journey. There are some key points, and you guys deal with this regularly. If you're on the dais, you understand the importance of trade-offs. There's always a decision to be made. It can help one person, help another, and most of the time you're looking for is win-win as much as you can. What level of win-win it is a little bit of a challenge. And each one of these options provide a very different opportunity for you, as well as then some risk related to it. So in option 1, you've got a guarantee of 3 seats that you're looking at. Now, that also then means that it's reducing. As you look at your table, you see then that there's only 20 seats remaining to be allocated. The nice thing is, though, is it does, though, codify it as it would be part of the interlocal agreement in there as part of what the principals would vote on. Option 2 is also codified. However, it's only guaranteeing 1. And you still have the challenge of a rotation that would need to occur. And when you look at all of those cities, if every one of them participated, not saying that everyone would, because by the way, anyone who is going to participate in the MPO must sign the interlocal agreement. So that's going to be an important aspect of it. But if you look at it, if you just did a 1-year term, it means that that small city, you're only going to get your shot once every 28 years. So it is a little bit of a challenge related to that. But the nice thing is it is consistent with current Florida statute. And I think that becomes an important element too. I did pull some statistics for you guys to look at how many different MPOs in the state of Florida have a small city representation. So of the 27, 8 do. So it's about 30% of them. In that case, all of them have 1 representative. So they've all basically followed the option 2 model related to it because it's also consistent with Florida statute. Now, option 3 could actually maximize a greater involvement by smaller cities because you're giving that opportunity for the Board of County Commissions as well as the City of Tampa, but it's also non-binding. So it wouldn't be part of that interlocal agreement, but it could maximize smaller city options. And again, all of these options came from the TMA meeting back in February 2024. So we've been working these things out as we go along. So each one of them has some risk and reward related to it. So we brought these to the Suncoast League of Cities. We had that, was it 2 weeks ago? Yeah, 2 weeks ago, Friday the 13th. And we asked them to give us some feedback on it. We spent about 2 hours talking about the pros and cons, how each one of the counties are different, how each small city is also a little different itself, and how well would another small city represent their particular need. So we asked them to rank them and said, okay, what's your ranking order? So it was option number 2, 1, and then 3. But I wanted you to see that 67% of those that voted, or let's say gave feedback, gave a preference, I want to say voted, because that's really not correct. We were really just giving feedback on it. It was almost 67% had said, hey, I would rank option number 2, number 1. So I wanted you to see that distribution itself as well. But then we also asked them, okay, if either one of these came before you, what would be the level of support that you had? So basically, if you gave it a 1, they strongly oppose, a 3 would be neutral, and a 5 would be strongly support. Well, option 2 came out to 4.7 as the final. So it's basically moved between that support to strongly support, where option 1 is between neutral and support, and option 3 is just over between neutral and support itself. So I wanted you to see that. We also gave them an opportunity to submit a comment or comments related to it. And I did include the comments that we did receive. And already local voices should make local choices. Smaller municipalities should have a vote, as all decisions will have some kind of impact. So that's the information that they wanted this group to know moving forward as you start thinking about your recommendations. So there we're going to start with an open discussion. I'm here to answer any questions, as are your executive directors, related to those three options. But again, the goal that we have, the objective is so I can know how many numbers we're looking at, would be to get to a recommended action. So if you want me to bring back up, I know these are smaller screens, so you all have the fact sheet in front of you. If you want us to go back, we certainly can. But now is your opportunity to discuss it and see if you can come to a consensus.
If you could talk a little bit about the timeline after this meeting and developing a staff recommendation. And...
Yeah, so let's go back. Thank you, Sarah. Sarah's a great driver. And two, one, there we go. Yep, so after this group, the objective, spring 2026, the intent then is once we know the number, how many Hillsborough, how many Pasco, how many Pinellas, the executive directors will then work with their boards to get a sense of, okay, with the numbers that are remaining, the seats that are remaining, how would they be distributed? Now, again, you want to base it off of population as much as possible, but you're also looking at equity issues as well. That's what federal statute has. So we're looking at spring, but then spring and summer. Once I get then that list of, hey, this is the MPOs, they will vote on that to say, this is the recommendation, do we agree or not agree? Then in spring and summer, that will give me the opportunity then to update the apportionment plan. So we'd be looking at requesting that vote summer of 2026. Now, our contract is to end in November of this year. And I'll remind everybody of this. Once it is ratified, you have 6 months to get that MPO operational. So you better be darn sure that you're ready to go, because the minute the governor signs off on it, you got 6 months to be operational. So the back part of this as well will be us working on some operational issues, looking at opportunities to say, with a new executive director and new board, here's what you can do to get off the ground. But we're really looking at summer 2026 to essentially have an apportionment plan going to those 4 principals to vote on, at least saying they support what's come out of the 3 MPOs. Any other questions before we start discussion?
I think it's an open forum. Yeah, I mean, Mayor.
No, I'll let Todd run it. Todd's answering the question, so Todd, you can.
I didn't want to be rude.
No, this is.
Okay, so, please forgive me if you've already covered this. You're saying that once a decision is made, which I truly understand, then we need to be operational. That operation standpoint will require funding for finance. Those dollars would come from the current individual boards. Those resources, I'm asking, those resources would be melded together. If that is the case, would that require an action by each individual commission to now designate those dollars towards the MPO versus, like right now, it's for us for Pinellas? That's number one. Number two, what will be the time frame, if any, to submit to the state any appropriation requests for funding of the actual newly created MPO based on the merger?
Yeah, I love that you asked that question, and that's what in the box that you see under spring, summer, regional MPO support team will refine the draft agreement. We'll actually have a funding plan, and that will tie to the interlocal agreement, because this is the tricky part. In most cases, likely, this regional MPO will be an independent body. So it means all 3 of them would be removing that effort from the counties. Now, that's not uncommon. You have that in Orlando, you have that in Broward, you have it in a few places here. And it is a process. It's a little messy. However, that's what we're going to have a funding program. So we'll actually have the framework for that in place. So at least then you have something to react to from that. You'd ask the question about the commission. Ultimately, when you're doing the interlocal agreement, the 3 board of commissions are signing off on it. So in a sense, it's basically moving that forward to say, okay, that funding is now going to move to this new agency. That will actually be part of the interlocal agreement.
The vote of support that we would be requesting this spring, summer, It's not to start the 6 months. It would be a barometer check to say, are we headed in the right direction? Because the work that Todd mentioned is going to happen after that would be all of the operational support materials, say, okay, when 6 months happens, you're ready to go. And the legal review and all those other pieces that Todd mentioned, we recognize that would take a significant amount of time with all of the 3 boards of county commissions in the city of Tampa. But before we go through those extensive legal reviews and setting everything up, we want to see, are we going, is everyone in agreement that this is headed in the right direction? Are we on the same page to keep going? So that when we have that official agreement set with the ILA and the ILA is approved and the governor signs it, we can do everything we need to do in 6 months.
Yes, I understood that part. I just wanted to make sure, as he was saying, once we make that decision and are ready to go, which I like that there is a very specific timeline, that way we're not dragging on it, we're dragging it out. But yes, I can understand that, but I just wanted to make sure, as it relates to any actions that the individual commissions would need to take to move forward to consolidation. But thank you.
Yes, and right now in the organizational procedure is how each of the 3 MPOs is supported with funding, because all 3 MPOs do get funding, federal funding that comes to the state of Florida. However, each MPO also has a host agency that provides some support for things that cannot be funded with those federal dollars, or matching funds are needed for anything in particular. Each MPO is handled differently in how that is provided. And that is a great point, because there are certain limitations that happen. Plus, because the MPO funding is reimbursement based, all of those host agencies are providing the upfront costs and reimbursed after each quarter. And so it's great, because you need to have a way to have that source of funding to be able to operate.
And then my last point, the reason I asked for all of that is because those of us that are commissioners, we have our budgetary schedule where we're working on our workshops, and then of course our public forums. And so if there is going to be any change in representation or fluctuation in dollar values, then I'm sure each commission will probably be looking at what is currently being provided versus where we stand now and what we may feel should be provided. So that was the other reason why I was asking all that. But thank you, that clears it up for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for allowing me.
Thank you, Commissioner. We'd like to point out to everybody, I'm getting comments, texts from people that are watching online or people that are listening online, and they're saying that there's a lot of background noise being picked up by the microphones and shuffling papers and things like that, and they're having trouble hearing the speakers. I'm not hearing that, but apparently the microphone is. So we'll all try to be quiet.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Commissioner Eggers.
Yeah, just one question. As we're talking about the smaller cities, it would be interesting to hear from each of the commission or each of the MPOs how they currently address their small cities. So we have a feel for how that treatment would go if we go with option 3, for example. I mean, to have more confidence in each of the groups so that we don't have to take care of it for them by the option 1 or 2. So it'd be interesting, just a brief comment on that. Thank you.
I can address Pasco.
Yes.
So we had our meeting yesterday for Pasco. We had all 4 cities that were present. The past 10 years, we've actually had the 4 cities in leadership positions for every vice chair and chair. So they've kind of led the meetings all the way through. So we've had them directly involved. And we talked about this option coming up. And as we had the 4 city folks there, it was myself and Commissioner Wakeman for the rest of the MPO. 3 were not there. It just kind of, it shows that these guys show up, they participate, they're respected, and we keep their value every the way through, and they're comfortable with the setup. And I think they're very comfortable knowing they're going to get representation. As everyone knows, every citizen votes for every person, whether they're living in the city or not. So to me, that representation is everywhere. I can tell you that we would be most comfortable, I think, with just leaving it at the number 3 option. If you did want to go to the next option, frankly, to me, I know it goes against what was talked about from before, but number 1 would be a good option that I could feel comfortable with, just because with everyone having a city, you could rotate out however the counties wanted to go do it, to bring them in and set it up. I'm comfortable with that too.
Thank you, Commissioner. So from the Hillsborough perspective, Commissioner Eggers, we do have some of our board members here, and you'll hear from them them, so they can speak for themselves. But as the chair and as the mayor of the smallest city, I can offer some thoughts on that. It seems as though the majority of our Hillsborough board is in favor of option 3, which is to allow each county to determine how the small cities are represented. I think we feel that way primarily because the 3 counties are so different, particularly Pinellas County with the 24 cities. Pasco and Hillsborough don't have anything like that. And so now, as the mayor of the smallest city and currently chair of the TPO, which is a tremendous honor, I will, in almost every scenario here, lose my seat on the TPO altogether. But I have to say, from my perspective, Hillsborough County has been very, very good to us. I don't think that Hillsborough County is going to forget that Temple Terrace and Plant City exist. I think that the commissioners cover. I mean, they're elected by the people of Temple Terrace and Plant City as well. I just don't think that Hillsborough County is going to leave us completely out of this. And so I would be comfortable as the smallest city mayor and with a option 3 where each county decides its own. Now I will put my TPO chair hat back on because I'm also representing the city of Tampa at this particular meeting. The city of Tampa will almost absolutely want to make sure that their numbers are set in stone. They're not going to vote in any way, shape, or form for this if Tampa is not adequately represented, which is fair. You know, they've got 450,000 people in their city, and I've got 28,000 in ours. So it's really, you know, I get it. So Tampa's going to, but they would have to be allocated seats by law anyway. They're large enough. So I think Tampa's going to definitely. The other concern I have, Todd, with, and I'm glad I get a chance to say this because I've got to leave. Plant City, we have particular concerns about Plant City. And remember, as chair, I'm here to represent their interests too. They are on the cusp of the 50,000 person. They're going to break 50,000 people long before the next census comes around and the reapportionment happens. I think it's important that we take that into account because they run the potential risk here in a very short time of being kind of on the lost island. So they go over 50,000 people, they're no longer eligible for the small cities committee or council or to serve. And yet they're not large enough to get a seat because they're large enough. So they're kind of stuck in this, okay, what happens to Plant City? Do they get any influence in this whatsoever? And so for all of those reasons, I think you'll find, and again, our board members can speak for themselves, but I think option 3, in our opinion, seems to work the best, particularly in deference to Pinellas County. And quite frankly, you know, 24 cities of varying sizes, you know, who are we to interfere with your decision making and how to handle that best?
Speak about Hillsborough or
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we actually in Pinellas County recently, because of actually increased the size of our board to allow for additional smaller city action. So, and I'm not speaking for the rest of my colleagues here, but as I looked at these options here, option 3 was one that stood out best to me as well for that reason, because we have 24 municipalities. And, you know, I wouldn't want to dictate to Hillsborough or Pasco or anybody else how they need to handle their small cities. And concern that I would have with like option 2, there's only one that's going to rotate among all of those smaller cities. I just think that in Pinellas County, if we had option 3, we would certainly have more than, I believe, more than one smaller city representative. We probably have 2, maybe 3, I don't know. But because we have so many, I wouldn't want there to be.
Commissioner Scheer.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just saying, I'm the new guy today. I appreciate it here, but I have been keeping up. I've been reading. Number 1 on choices, yes, I think definitely county should decide the representation of the level of the cities. This makes sense for us, and I think it makes sense for the rest of the county. But being new, just want you to know that a couple of things that are being presented today that we're expected to vote on. The 25-member board to me it's unacceptable. That's too much. I believe that dilutes accountability with the voters. Nobody will to charge us for together. Down to 15 or something. People need to know who's appointed. That's number one for me. And number two, under all these three of these scenarios, I cannot get past the fact that, and I know that we're all working in the department manager, but I can't get past the fact that Hillsborough County has 52% of the vote walking out. That's are Pinellas and Pasco. Are we just going to be advisors for this new organization? I mean, Hillsborough can decide everything. That needs to be very noticed. Not that you wouldn't think regionally, but I just think the proportional care doesn't work. That's kind of where I'm right here today.
Thank you, Commissioner. Todd, I'll let Todd take back over because he's still, let him call on people because he's really responding to the.
Yeah, and thank you all for that. And I'm going to just give a summary quickly of what I've heard so far. From the Pasco perspective, option 3 was favored. Option 1 was okay as well. And there was a feeling that in the county, in the current NPO state, that smaller cities are very much engaged. From the Hillsborough TPO standpoint, option 3 was favored by the representative, just to ensure that Tampa Bay had their numbers, which again, it's decided by population apportionment, so it's by state law that is required to basically determine the number of seats. Now, again, that will change in 2030, so as Pasco starts to do it, and it's just like Congress, just to be clear. Florida's been picking up seats, California's been losing, Illinois has been losing, New York's been losing. The same thing would happen here, is you do reallocate once the census is complete. So I like that there's some forward thinking related to it because it will change how the representation would look like. And then there was a concern about Plant City being in the middle. What do you do for those cities that basically cross over 50,000, but aren't high enough to then warrant the population? Pinellas, from both representatives, we heard option 3, with though a concern of the size of the board being 25. So by state statute, the board can be anywhere between 5 and 25 members. 25 is the maximum amount. And I was just reading what had occurred here back in May of 2024 with the TMA. And then there was some concern about the influx of Hillsborough having greater number of votes related to that. Again, that's primarily due to the population. So that's the summary. I've seen a lot of things going on. I think you had yours up first. Sorry, I have my glasses.
That's okay. Thank you. I just want to make a couple of comments. I think that there's a tendency to see the small cities as looking out for one another, and I think that that's probably accurate. But I also think that small cities are going to be very likely to fall into line with their own counties as well, if there are issues that are, go across the county lines. It seems to me that number 2 and number 3 are actually very, very close to being the same thing. It's just that what number 2 would do is that would essentially instruct Pinellas to give, it would take one of Pinellas' seats, make it for small cities, and since they have 24 most of the time, or even all the time, that seat would be occupied probably by a Pinellas city. So they're really probably the same thing. That's number 1. Number two, to Commissioner Scherer's point, I think it is not true that Port Tampa Bay and Tampa International Airport will be aligned with Hillsborough County and the city of Tampa. I think it's actually the opposite. I think that in some cases, they will act independently in the other way. The airport's a good example. They depend completely on rental car income in order to fund everything. They have been constantly voting in favor of every expansion project that comes along, even if the city of Tampa is, it may be where the opposition is coming from. So it's not, it's not in any way, I think, a given that there's alignment there. From my point of view, I favor 2 and 3, but none of these are deal killers for me. They're all going to leave us with essentially the same thing. I am conscious, though, the city of Tampa is not here because they had a late land use meeting last night. But getting their votes, I think, is going to be much tougher because they really are afraid of just being paved over in this entire process. I think number 3 is the best alternative because I think giving Hillsborough the flexibility to divide our seats the way that we see fit may be the way that we're able to help get it across the finish line with them. I'm looking at Commissioner Myers. She and I both represent commission districts that have a good deal of city of Tampa residents in them. The Expressway Authority is an important component in our county that might not exist in the other counties. And I think having that flexibility with as many seats as possible is actually going to be what helps us get it across the finish line. My fear, if we reduce the number of seats, is that we won't have enough to allocate to satisfy those concerns, and we won't be able to get the votes to do it. So I hear you about the unwieldiness size of the board, but I'm afraid if we make it much smaller, we're not going to be able to give Tampa what they need to feel comfortable.
I'll just weigh in from a staff perspective, just maybe it would be instructive. We had a 13-member board up until we reapportioned last year and expanded the board to 19 members. And we've gone to having quarterly workshops to have a little bit more dialogue. And I feel like the meetings have been a lot more streamlined, a lot more efficient. We routinely have 1.5 to 2 hour meetings, whereas before we were going 4:30, 5 o'clock pretty regularly, almost a 4-hour meeting in some cases. And we do have an elected chair, an elected vice chair, and there will be an executive director. So I do think accountability will certainly be there. But I understand, the concerns about an unwieldy board. The Joint Board of County Commissioners expressed some concerns about the size of the board. I don't remember what meeting, but maybe 6 months ago. And that came back to the TMA Leadership Group, and the TMA was asked, do you want to reconsider 25 and maybe go to a smaller board? Because that seemed to be some of the sentiment at the joint BCC meetings. And I think the TMA was very clear that we selected 25 to reflect the diversity of this region. And I think that speaks to Commissioner Cohen's comments, that it gives more voices and a more structural avenue for people to have that influence. I'd also like to point out that under option 3, I don't think we're suggesting, and I want to clarify that this would be up to the Board of County Commissioners to decide which cities get a vote, but it would be more of a collaboration to create a mechanism to where those cities can directly elect somebody to serve, some sort of forum for that to happen. I think we want to avoid having a situation where we're submitting a list of cities to the county commission to approve or disapprove who would sit on the board. And that's just my sense of it. I'm not sure what mechanism that would be, but it was a little vague.
Yeah, and the mechanism hasn't been decided on because ultimately, and that could be something that if option 3 is the preferred, to discuss. But I think you're hitting on a really important topic too, though, as we start to look at recommendations as they go through. Because the intent of this with option 3 is just like all of them, it's working with the current MPO boards, though, as a conduit to those principals. Because in many cases, principals do sit on those boards. In every case, they're there on that board. So it's part of that negotiation to then work to say, okay, how would we do this internally? And again, all of that will get reflected then into the interlocal agreement, so it does get codified related to that, as though later on down the pike. But I think that's a really good point, is because, yeah, it wouldn't be codified now. You would basically work, or we're not going to answer that question now. We'd have to answer that later, but we can certainly do that once the current MPO boards are working through. I did want to add one thing too, though, before I brought it up. So this is from the February discussion, February 16th, Friday, the TMA 2024, because that was discussed greatly, is the airport and the port. And again, in May, it was a consensus. And I do think there was a good point that Commissioner Kim had mentioned, that the county does not have control over the compensation of those two boards. And so that was one of the key points that was brought up to then move that forward to the TMA. So I just wanted you guys to have that information, because it was a long discussion about that, and there was great concern. That's what really led to the consensus in May. So we have several. Let's go with Pinellas, and then we'll go Pasco, and then we'll make it regional. So rotation.
Thank you very much. So first of all, I wanted to just echo Whit's comments. Expanding our board to 19. I had some concerns about that originally, thinking that would be a lot, a bit unwieldy. But actually, I think it is allowed for greater dialogue, and I think some of the smaller cities have appreciated the opportunity to have a voice at that table. These transportation issues are things that it affects all of us every day in unique ways that go directly to quality of life. So I think them having that input is much appreciated. So first of all, I just want to say that. And then secondly, a quick question. If you could remind me on the Tampa International Airport for Tampa Bay, were those vision to be staff members or elected? Staff.
Yeah.
All right. Correct. Thank you.
Yeah, and I do want to mention that too, because in your review with Federal Highway, because MPOs are reviewed regularly, your expansion of the board in Fort Pinellas was actually seen as a best practice. So that was in your write-up when you received that from Federal Highway, right? Is they had seen that as a huge improvement and best practice.
He actually had us tag it first.
You went up first? Okay, yeah, whatever order. I apologize. I wasn't always looking at order. So please.
Yeah, I just want to kind of offer just a couple of different kind of perspectives and points that keeps kind of rattling in my brain a little bit. And some of it might be obvious, but I just want to state it. So I think the success of what we're doing here, let me first say representation matters, and we all have communities and people that we serve every single day. But I've served on a ton of these regional boards over the course of my career. The most complicated is the DC Metro board, which we don't want to have in any way. But what I will say is the success of this and these discussions to me is not just about what we do and what the composition is. The success is that we bring a group of people together that think as a region to address the transportation issues. And I think we have to be really careful to not structure of the board, I think, matters in terms of the mindset of the group and what you accomplish together. And so we're not going to serve this community really the way we need to if we come together as a regional board that's siloed into three different areas from a mindset perspective. So I think we just have to really kind of caution ourselves and maybe get ourselves in that regional mindset. And the reason I'm kind of stating this is really 2 points. You know, it struck me when we were looking at the small cities and the cities over 50,000 that to me, it's not about one in Hillsborough, one in Pasco, or one in Pinellas. It's about we have 28 cities that are under 50,000, and we have 5 cities that are over 50,000, and that's what we're trying to tackle as a region. And I think the last point I'll make is where we start doesn't necessarily be where we have to be where we finish. You know, this group is going to come together. And as we start working as a region to address the real transportation issues that we have, that's going to evolve. The mindset is going to evolve, and how we tackle it, the effectiveness, and really the way it works works. You look at Commissioner Wassler, who had to leave, made a great point at our last TPO meeting about the success of Tampa Bay water and what that has done in the region. And I know Commissioner Cohen serves on that board as well. I think that's a great model for us, not necessarily with the structure, but just the mindset of what they're doing. And I've only been here a few years, and I certainly wasn't here when Tampa Bay Water was formed. But I bet they're more effective today than they were the first day that they started. And I think that's the point I want to kind of bring to the table and maybe try and influence people in a way to think about that regional mindset as we're constructing this board and as we're building what this conversation looks like and as we're trying to make these decisions as a region. I just think the mindset is really, really important. But I recognize that we still have communities and people that we represent. So just wanted to make that.
No, I think that's a really good point. And ultimately, in phase 2, that's something we'll definitely consider. I know in my 30 years of working with NPOs, and often that's board education, right? Having the right kind of orientation, getting them in that mindset, and throughout the whole process. And we're going to definitely address that as part of phase 2.
So way back when we first talked about the apportionment, the numbers just came up based on population, et cetera. When the airport and the port got the extra seats, I opposed that, but I will say this, the main thing is we need to move forward to finish this and bring the region together, because we're gonna get a ton of federal money. The sooner we do it, the better. So if there's a way to speed up your timetable, I like to see that. Obviously, we want to make sure we can make it all work financially. So with this discussion, when I first saw the chart up there was like number 2 leading the way, I'm going, oh my God. Then number 3 like stood out to me, but after listening to Commissioner Scherer, I think number 1 is probably the better and kind of shows you, it give you a little bit more balance with it. Because if every county gets to pick a city and let the counties pick how they want to pick it, that'll balance it out a little bit more and give that little smaller city representation too, which I think all the smaller cities will feel good about having that extra little bit of position. So I'm going to say that I'm very comfortable with number 1. And I think it kind of gets you a compromise. I think the larger boards can work very well. I think this region works very well together. I mean, better than ever. And I think it's only going to get stronger and stronger as we go together to try to get together and join and try to get this extra federal money. So I think it helps you get to where you want to be.
Other comments? Did you have your hand up in the back? Right. Sure. Chair. Oh, you're not Andy.
No. Yeah, I think I saw your hand a while ago. Yeah.
I didn't know if you all finished around the table.
We do have Councilmember Driscoll actually. Now I see that.
I'll wait.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see your tag. Please.
No, it's fine. I'd love
If
to
you'd
hear-
like
I'd
to.
love to hear what they.
Yeah, I figured
Sure,
you would. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. Just real quickly, again, I know the perspective that the University of South Florida does in their regional annual economic study, which I always find interesting. Don't always believe it. I don't buy it on every single point, but in general, they're talking about regionalism and how important it is as it relates to comparing to other regions around the country. And that if this region works together, it can become one of those premier regions to attract additional dollars. Businesses don't care about county lines. Universities don't care about county lines. Elected officials and their constituents might care about county lines. And so that's what we're here talking about, the officials anyway. So we're making sure that our residents are protected. So the only thing I would ask as we move forward is just a feeling, because we've heard this from time to time over the years, that with this approach, we're not going to lose each of our areas. We're not going to lose a certain level of funding already there. So it's not like, oh, all of a sudden, we're going to get nothing. So each county is going to have something. What we're trying to do is put that sail out there and collect more winds of dollars, so that more than what we normally get could be spread out on regional projects. So I think that's an important point, so that we don't feel that that's at risk by doing this for crying out loud. And that I like the number 3, it puts more faith into each county doing the right thing. But that's an important point, so that folks don't lose that inner fear that all of a sudden, my God, Hillsborough is going to take everything. And that's not gonna happen, but I understand the thought and the feeling about it. So I think that's just a piece that we might want to address over time. Thank you.
Thank you. If it's not too much trouble to go back to the slides, that show the results of the input from the Central State of Cities.
Yes, of course. It's two more, I believe, Sarah. Oh, I'm sorry. There we go. And again, this was the input that they were providing, just giving you a perspective.
Right, and it's interesting to me that they had the most interest in option 2, given that there would be just one representative, whereas the other one is thinking about an opportunity for 3. Not having attended, I would love to hear if there was if anyone talked about their reasons for supporting that one more than the others.
They did. So there's a lot of conversation. I'm going to try to sum it up as best I can.
Yeah.
And again, I don't want to speak for anyone, but those that attended it.
What was the vibe?
I love it. Yes. So the vibe was there was definitely a feeling that they loved the idea that there needed to be some level of representation. Like we started with that. They all agreed that their regions were very different as they are now. Again, as 3 separate NPOs. Also, they agreed that there was a strong need to look at it from a regional perspective as well. What they really liked about the idea, though, of putting together a committee to select one of their own is it then gave them a forum to work at it, to basically, and again, how often they do that would be decided later, but some of what we talked about at the principals workshop was maybe quarterly, and they are electing then their own person to represent them. It felt like they had a stronger sense of autonomy related to it. Obviously, you also have that example throughout Florida where people are doing that, and they've seen that it's been successful, including forward Pinellas using it. They are one of the ones, as I mentioned before. About 30% of the MPOs in the state of Florida have a system similar to that, where it's a small city related to it. There was a bit of a concern with option 1, and the reason why it kind of got knocked out a little bit is they didn't like that it was reducing the number of seats remaining then, that it felt like it might give an overrepresentation of the small cities, because it was also unique, because when you look at Hillsborough, it would mean that you'd have 2. So it'd be rotating every time 2. Pinellas, you would only be rotating, you could be rotating 20 times, right? And then Pasco. So there was a little bit of that feeling of maybe that doesn't make a whole lot of sense because you would have that continual strangeness in the rotation standpoint. They liked the idea of codifying it within a committee where they all met, they each had an individual voice as part of that committee, and then voted one of their own to be on that. Some of the things that I've seen too that I think are interesting, the Broward MPO does this, is part of their interlocal agreement is that small city representative is also on the executive committee. So there's a greater voice there. So they put that in their interlocal agreement to do that. So that's why 2 kind of worked out versus 3. Generally speaking.
Mr. Chair, I need to leave in like a minute. I'm trying to give myself a little cushion there. If I could, just one more thing before I go.
If you're brief, we do have other people.
I'll be real brief. So one thing I wouldn't mind if we did that option 1, which again, I feel most comfortable with. I think if you did set up, they can still set up a small committee coalition, meet quarterly, et cetera. And kind of like we have a board here, we have members from each one leading the meetings all the way through and kind of rotating it out. I think that could be incorporated into the same thing.
So, and I like that you're bringing up the idea of the implementation, because if I may share, something that is important related to Florida statute, and it's 339.175 is the governing. I want to read this to you because the implementation of 1 becomes critical, because this is state statute. Now, again, it could change and be part of that negotiation. On voting membership, voting members, so this is subsection 3A, voting members shall be elected officials of general purpose local governments, one of whom may represent a group of general purpose local governments. Now, that's why that 30% that you see in other MPOs have set it up that way. You have to implement it somehow, create that structure within the county, but I'm just wanting to say there's some exposure that you can have there, because I don't know how that would be interpreted by the governor's office, but I did want you to know that that's there. There could definitely be a way to overcome that, but we just have to be very smart about how we put that in the interlocal agreement. Because I don't want to say it's not insurmountable, but we have to be aware of it. So I think your idea of doing something internal and then bringing that up could work. So that way you're at least meeting that letter.
We have one more person, Commissioner.
Commissioner Gwen Myers. I'm in support of option 3. And I can remember about 3 years ago when Secretary Wynn presented the idea to us and was talking about it, and why we could not receive all the funding, federal funding, for this, because we were not coming together as one region. That was the main thing behind all of this, how we can come together and get a lot of projects done. And here today, we're still talking almost the same conversation as we were talking 3 years ago. And it's like, if we put this in place, okay, and we can agree, when would be the opportunity that this could be revised, we can change the seats and all? Because we need to do something as a region. We always bragging on our region and what's in our region, but it's how we sitting around this table need to come together for the good of the region and make some decisions for the region moving forward.
Now, I'm a big advocate, just in my experience, and I'm giving you just what I've observed. In my experience, interlocal agreements are very challenging to update. However, I've also seen that doing nothing is doing nothing. And that is usually not a good thing when we're dealing with our constituents and the people that we're working with. And I think being able to have an approach where we punch as much into the bylaws as we can related to that instead of the interlocal agreement, that's going to be the strongest ability to give you flexibility as things change, because the board would actually change the bylaws. You wouldn't have to go back to each one of the signatures to do that. So I think we want to be careful about what we include in the interlocal agreement to give you that flexibility you're talking about, to allow you to make adjustments within the bylaws and how that would react.
So would that be like in the next 2-3 years? So once
Yeah.
we approve this today, you know, I mean, not today, but once it's approved, then you can consider, because you have to do something in order to move forward to get something over.
Correct. And that's
you have the opportunity. What we don't like, in 3 years from now, 2 years from now, we can make the necessary change.
If I could step in, that's a great point. And one thing that has already come up today is the 2030 census. And when the 2030 census comes out, which is usually anticipated 2032 or 2033, that's an opportune time to look at things. That's, I believe the impetus for Pinellas was the 2020 census and the results there, which resulted in their updated word composition. And so that would be a time that certainly you're required to look at the interlocal agreement, but you could update it at that time and you would have the updated census information much more recent and
the last thing I'd just like to add, as a region, we're not gonna leave anyone out or overlook anyone in putting this together. You know, so let's just keep that in mind.
Thank you for that. If we would like to take action today, now is the time that we, if it's very brief.
It's very brief.
Yeah.
She said that doing nothing is doing nothing. That's not technically accurate. Because Tallahassee's paying attention to what we do.
Oh, yes.
So I just want to make sure that we're all aware that they're paying very close attention to what we do.
Yes, that is actually a very relevant point.
I didn't want to repercussions, but yes.
Yeah, Tallahassee has put pressure on us to move in this direction. So we have a commissioner who needs to go, and right now, if he leaves, we do lose quorum. So if anyone wants to make an action, this is the time, but we can also continue discussion if that's not the case.
Can I make a motion?
I'm sorry. I want to go ahead and hear from these two people and then quickly.
If I could just very quickly say that if you do not make a motion today with recommended action, then we would have two options as staff. One is we could delay this until your May meeting, or two, we'd have to move forward as staff without a recommendation from the TMA on the seats so that we know how many seats are remaining.
Okay. There's a couple of questions. Is that what we have right now, or?
I had a question in the file so that
Okay. Go ahead with your comment question.
What is the current portion required? No permit.
Well, it depends on the option that you're seeing.
No, I mean,
So-
the portions, is it 24%, 50%, Hillsborough, what is required?
Oh, well, yeah, and do you have a separate? Oh, it's a hidden spot. Yeah, you're right, I hit it. I actually was prepared for this.
2 weeks ago.
Mhm.
And I felt no pressure at all. There was no pressure given.
Commissioner Starkey has a comment and pause.
Okay.
I had it before.
Okay, and I'll get those numbers. There we go.
I can answer based on population. Hillsborough has 49% of the total regional population. Pinellas County has 33 and Pasco has about 17.
So then I don't understand why it's 49%, we're giving them another 2 votes. With the airport and with the port. We don't have any representation.
Because that's a regional entity.
Because that puts it up to 50. 49 is a lot different than 50.
Thank you, Commissioner Myers.
I'm ready to make a recommendation.
Okay, I think I don't want to make people feel like we're voting because we have to right this second. But if there's motions to be made, then we'll go ahead and let those be made now. And Commissioner Mariano actually indicated he would like to make a motion first, so I'll let him do that.
So I'll try my motion. My motion would be to go to option 1 and with the clause in there allowing the small cities to have their own special meetings, picking who their representatives are as they go.
Yeah, we would second.
Do we have a second for that motion? I do not hear a second, so that motion ends there.
My motion is
Commissioner
to
Myers.
accept, the move for option 3.
Okay,
I'll second the motion.
okay. All right, is there discussion on the motion? Seeing none, is there an option for roll call voting? Ross is not here. Should I call it out? Okay. Slater, we'll move, I'm sure just these ones right here.
They're here, they're here. Here.
Not black. Okay, all right. Looks like we have, is it Slater?
Slater, yes.
Slater, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mariano?
Aye.
Driscoll?
Yes.
Floyd, yes. Is that Shearer? Shearer? Okay. That's all that I have here. So motion passes 4-1. Thank you for the discussion. Yes, I had to ask multiple times to be sure.
So I want to clarify something if I may. The TMA Leadership Group typically operates as an advisory body for MPOs.
Mhm.
So the staff will take this, develop staff recommendation and bring it back to the MPOs based on the action.
Okay, thank you for that clarification,
Thank you,
Councilmember.
Will.
Thank you. Councilmember Driscoll, you had a comment?
No, I did, but no longer.
Okay, all right.
And Mr. Chair, just so you know, we put on the QR code, so if they want to change the documentation, it's available there on that website.
Okay, excellent. Thank you for that as well. Does that end our 7 o'clock section? We
Can
move
you
on
read
to
some of the
that.
comments online? Oh, or Chelsea, can you read some of the comments online?
I do know that there's been comments from Commissioner Starkey online.
Yes.
What I saw was they were generally supportive of option 3 is what I saw from Commissioner Starkey online when I could read the comments.
Yes.
I mean, are we taking online comments again? I mean, I thought they said we can't participate online. Because if we can participate online, Commissioner Nowicki would be not supportive of option 3.
No, voting is not allowed online, but you're allowed to participate in the meeting, comment in the meeting online as well. So,
Okay, well, note my comment not in favor.
thank you.
But he's not a member of the committee.
Okay, well, I mean, he's, any commissioner's allowed to present their opinion,
Oh, yeah.
just not vote. That's not a vote, yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
give your recommendation.
Staff, no people online I'm sorry to say, are not allowed to participate online in this meeting, which is how it was advertised.
Does participate mean?
They are not, they are observers only.
Okay, okay.
Sorry.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
All right, I apologize
no
for that. I
comments.
was not told ahead of time. Okay, that completes our discussion on regional MPO apportionment plan. There's no other comments. We have item here for other business. Is there other business? Not seeing any, then I appreciate everyone for bearing with me today, and we'll go ahead and adjourn this meeting. Thank you. I guess that's how it's been in the past.
I guess that's a comment. It was advertised as a comment. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, because even like with our, you can, but you can't vote. You can say whatever you want, but you can't vote. You can't.
That's fine. I mean, I think the way that I'm gonna report it is the TMA referred option 3. We heard from some folks.
Yeah,